يوم Welcome everybody to the Grounds Committee meeting today. I'd like to turn it over. Greg, go ahead.
Welcome everyone, Buildings and Grounds. First agenda item, I'll be brief on it. In 2021, the 2 and 3G cell service was discontinued. We needed to upgrade our GPS units on our buses at that time. With Safe Transport, we paid $9,900 to do that. We got pretty much, I'm going to call it 1.5 years of use or service out of them, and they discontinued their software program as of June 30th. So we approached Safe Transport folks and felt that we should do a partial refund because we only got basically 1.5 years of use out of them. And long story short, they agreed to refund us $5,500. So that will be coming back to us. The next item, summer
Mr. Hart,
workers.
I'm
Yes,
sorry, I forget, can you explain, did we go to a different program? Right,
Yes,
I remember hearing about it and I apologize for asking.
Yep. As of June 30th, Safe Transport will be discontinued. We partnered with TransFinder.
Thank you, that's what it is.
And actually, we had our first day one of training, and that's moving along really nicely and quickly. We're getting set up.
Thank you, sorry, thanks for the question.
No, that's fine.
Now, can I ask you about that TransFinder? Are you able to track that in your office, everything that's going on, or is that handled by?
Any device that has a wireless connection or a laptop,
Yeah.
my cell phone, any of those things.
Okay.
You can see live map where our buses are at. There are different roles in the program. Some people have more access than others, but
But you know ASAP is something, there's an issue.
yep.
Okay.
Any other questions on that? Hearing none, we'll move on to the student workers and supervisor. This year, we'd like to partner with the PA Career Link folks. Our students are going to be encouraged to apply at Career Link through our Career Link liaison at the high school. And we will get our own students here as workers. So they pay their salary or wages, and we will need to provide their clearances for them. That's one thing they don't do. But the students will be employees of Career Link, and they come here to work for us in the summer, and there is no cost to us to do that.
Now, what was the reason for that? If you just,
I think it was a cost savings.
okay.
It doesn't cost us anything to run this program, and we will get our own students. And if we don't get enough of our own students, we may get a student from somewhere else, but we've actually asked for all of our own students, and we'll see how it goes this year.
And that will help them out by giving them some sort of work experience. So you,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
How many are you getting, Greg? Do you have any idea?
So we're talking about 4. We'll see how it goes. If there's more, maybe we'll be able to expand the program a little bit. I'm not sure. We'll see how many applicants we get, and we'll see where it goes.
You usually hire more than that when we were hiring.
It was usually 5. The other part of this is that we would like to hire our own supervisor here, as we have in the past years. That person would be an employee of Northern Lehigh for the summer and supervise those students. So with the board's blessing, there is an agenda item coming up on this month's agenda to approve a supervisor at $15 an hour to supervise our Career Link students.
So is that somebody that we currently do not have employed, that we're gonna go actively look for, or are you looking to take one of your current employees and give them the additional task?
So we're hoping to hire a teacher or someone who would like to run or supervise the program. If we can't find one, it'll fall back to one of my staff members, and it would, they would not be paid an additional $15 to do it. They would, what I want to say, there just wouldn't be a supervisor. Any questions on that?
Matt? What do we with
Oh,
that.
okay, yeah.
Right.
I'm sorry, yeah.
Is the committee okay with that agenda item appearing on?
I'm okay, that way at least you have it authorized in case it doesn't happen. Gail, you okay?
That's fine, sorry.
Thank you. I think that's the end of my agenda for this evening.
Okay, for technology, I have 2 items on the technology agenda. These are orders that we typically place in the summer, but the last 2 years, I placed the orders early for Chromebooks and projectors because we've had a lot of issues with things being delayed. This year, I'm told that Chromebooks and projectors are both a little better shipment-wise than they were, but what I'm asking for is permission from the board if we can place these orders early. These orders typically come out of a lease that we do. We do a yearly lease for, it's usually around $150,000. That pays for Chromebooks for Peters Elementary, Slatington Elementary, middle school, and then also we replace some projectors every year as well. So what I'm looking to order this year is, for Chromebooks, we're looking for 325 Chromebooks. This would be for kindergarten and Peters Elementary, and 5th grade, I believe is what we determined for Slatington Elementary, plus some spare Chromebooks on top of that. So it'd be 325 Chromebooks with the licensing for the Google and also for the cases to go with them. And the cost of that would be, oh, you got it up there? Yep, there it is. $92,290.25. And the second thing would be the projector summer order as well. And the projector cost, and this would be for 26 projectors. This would be for, what we're going to do is over the next 2 years, we're going to do Slatington Elementary. We don't have enough projectors to buy this year. I believe we have close to 40 up there. But what we're looking to do this year is do about 26 projectors in Slatington Elementary. Get most of the that should cover most of the classrooms, and the cost for that would be $41,159.82.
Are these in your budget?
These will be in the 2023-24 budget. We do a lease every year, yes, and that will be in Mrs. Molatoris' presentation. And I did speak with the vendor, and he said if we order these in April, they will delay billing until July 1st, so that way we can put it into the next fiscal year. So it will not come out of this budget, it will come out of next year's budget. And that is what we're looking to do with that money next year.
So those projectors are new projectors that you're putting in?
Yeah, these will be brand new BrightLink projectors, interactive projectors with wireless on them as well. This is what we've been putting in. We did Peters a few years ago. We did the high school, not all the high school, we did about a little over half the high school because some of those were newer there, so we didn't have to replace them all. Then we did middle school last year, and now we're moving on to Slatington Elementary. And that's going to be this year and next year we'll be doing Slatington Elementary.
So after that, we should be set for a while?
We should be set for a little while, yes. The only thing we'd have to do is go back and revisit the high school the following year because we didn't get them all that year, and some of those are going to be a little older, so we'll get on. We'll revisit the high school after that. Okay.
So are the 26 for 1 year, or are the 26
No, that's-
gonna be,
That's for 1 year. That's for just this
And
year.
then
Next year will be
next year-
less, a little less next year.
got it?
Yep. Although depending on how it works out, we may actually squeeze some of the high school in next year as well, depending on the budget. So
Sure.
we'll look at that next year. But yeah.
I'm a little confused, it's like, we're putting these next year's budget.
Yep.
Why did we not put them in this year's budget?
Well-
Because you're getting them next year, and in the future, will we be?
Typically, what we have done in the past, we've ordered these in July, okay? What we did is the last 2 years, because we had trouble
Supply chain.
fulfilling our orders with the supply chain, we ordered them a little early, but then we still put it on next year's lease. So the vendor said yes if we order it early. That way we get our supplies here in the summer, especially the Chromebooks. Those we definitely need this summer. Just for the last 2 years, our projectors were delayed. We didn't get them until almost Christmas time. Like we didn't get them until November the last couple of years. So we would like to get them ordered early. And this year there are some in the system, I was told, but not all 26. There might be, he said there's about 10 that could be shipped right away. So maybe we can get some and start putting them in over the summertime. That's what we're trying to do. But it would still come out of next year's lease. This would be part of our next year's lease. Yep.
the Chromebooks that you're looking are some of those are obviously for the new incoming
Yep.
kindergarten students.
Yep.
And then some are replacing, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes.
And then what type of, like, turnaround are you looking, so
We're-
when do you replace them?
What we're
Because-
doing right now is we're on a 4-year cycle. So basically every 4 years, students would get new Chromebooks. A lot of times kindergarten are gonna get them every year because they're new.
Right.
Then we look at other years where we need to fill them in. But it's basically, students keep Chromebooks for 4 years. They'll never have one over 4 years, and we fill in that cycle. Yep.
And then, correct me if I'm wrong, and I apologize. I thought we were talking about at our junior high, or middle school and our high school, eventually going to Chromebook also?
Well, we already did that. Actually, well, we didn't do that yet, but we did that. That was out of lease money that we had built in this year. So we already ordered Chromebooks for the high school
So
for next year.
they're all good, so we got
Yes.
4 years of
They're
those,
going to be,
325
yeah, we
of
actually,
those.
yep, we ordered those
Okay.
a couple months ago. Yeah, so the high school will be brand new Chromebooks this year. This is just to fill in for Peters and Slatington, and then also, we did middle school last year.
Right.
So this is Slatington and Peters this year for
Got it.
the
Thank
kindergarten
you.
and 5th grade.
It's the same problem I had, I couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep up.
Yeah, but you're correct, we just talked about this a few months ago, but that was strictly high school.
Okay,
Yep.
Yeah, we have 2 sets of leases. We have a set of lease that begins July 1 of every year, and then the new lease that we just started for every 4 years, that's gonna be
Yes.
like March, April. And that's to get those high
Yeah.
school or the bigger group done and ordered early.
so the amount that we're paying, is that a lease amount, or is
No,
that
this
a
is-
one-time buy and then we also have a payment of a lease?
What it is, yeah, but the way it works is, we buy it from the vendor, but then what we do is we get a lease for, usually it's it's $50,000 a year. So it's a $150,000 total lease. And what we do is, the lease company, actually, we submit the bills to the lease company, and they pay this, and then we pay the lease company, is how that works.
Got it. And we can combine that lease into our projectors and Chromebooks and
Yes,
everything?
yes. Yeah,
that's
they
why
have,
the numbers
they
are
have
that
criteria,
number.
like so much of it has to be hardware. You're allowed to have like a certain percentage software, and then you're allowed to have a certain percentage, some other things are there. They have like requirements on the leases when we do that. And typically, we put that lease on, that's usually on the June agenda where we get that lease approved. Yeah, yeah.
And you're
when
saying
the
it's about
budget's approved.
50,000 a year?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's-
So the first one, the $50,000 a year is the smaller lease that he does every July 1. And then
Yeah.
the one that we just did in January was for $150,000.
Right.
So that overall is almost like $450,000 worth of product that he
Yes,
ordered.
yes.
Because we pay $150, $150,000, $130,000.
Yeah, and that one was for the high school, and that was also for staff.
Right,
Because
staff,
we're updating staff
replenish
this
everybody's
summer as
staff
well.
laptops.
Yep. So that's what that one's for.
I'm just trying to get the 4 years and how we
Yep.
break that over the 4 years.
Yeah.
What are you doing with the ones that you're replacing?
Well, the ones that we replace, what we do with the Chromebooks, a lot of those we pull parts out of, because a lot of the LCDs are compatible, even with the newer models. Like, we're pulling them out of, we pull parts out of the ones that we used 5 years ago, and we use that for replacement parts for damage. And then what we do too is we recycle, and then sometimes we get a little money back for them. So we'll pull what we can out of them, and then we also recycle. But we actually use a lot of the older ones too for spares, because they do get damaged a lot with the Chromebooks. They're at the younger grade levels. They do get more damage than we have at the upper grade levels. So we do go through more. So we use them for spares as well. Like if we have good, what we do is we go through them. We'll pull good ones for spares, and then some of them we pull parts out of, and then we recycle whatever's left over. Yep. So we use it. We reuse as much as we can. Yeah.
Anybody else have any question?
Is the committee comfortable with both items going to the Monday night agenda?
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all I have for my agenda tonight.
Thank you. We'll close this one, and I guess we'll go into finance.
Nicole, cafeteria update.
Good evening. I don't have any updates that are new in terms of like the financial side of things, but I just wanted to announce today was our kickoff day for our new POS system. We had a couple minor humps this morning to get over during our breakfast service, which, pushed the lines a little bit longer, but since then, with the help of IT, I just want to shout out and say thank you to everybody in the IT side just for all their hard work. Stephen, you too back there, just for, getting all the information, all the back of the house Chinese language to me that thankfully we have them to have this transition be very smooth. So far it's been a great first day. And I also have great news. We have Margaret, our dietetic intern from Cedar Crest. She started with me on the 22nd of March. She'll be with me for a total of 5 weeks, so we're 1 week down already. The time's like flying. She has a lot of projects to accomplish, so we're kind of working on a bunch of things all at the same time. So if you see her face, now you have a face to the name and can say hi as you're passing through. So she's been a great asset so far, and we're just working together to get things done. So just wanted to have a shout out to her as well.
Oh, welcome.
Welcome, Margaret.
Are you for the registered dietitian program? Is that what you're doing?
Yeah, I'm doing my dietetic internship.
Right, that's what I
I'm from
thought.
Cedar Crest.
Okay, thanks. Well, welcome. She'll be here. Be a good
I was
role
in
model.
her shoes not that long ago. Well, kind of long ago now, I guess. Longer than I want to admit. But
No, that's great. Thank you.
that'll be it for the cafeteria update for tonight.
I guess we go to Sherry.
Yep, so tonight we're going to present our, the first look at the budget for the 23-24 school year. And I'll turn it over to Matt. That's going to start.
And actually, Steve already has it up on the screen. So again, good evening, everyone. And the layout and the format of tonight's presentation will be familiar to you at this point. We've been using the same kind of sequence of information over the last 4 or 5 years now. So we'll take our first look at what we're thinking and also look for some direction from the board to help us continue to refine the presentation as we move through the next few months. So let's see here, Act 1 index. Sherry, this is all you.
This is the projections for the Act 1 index. I go through this every year so that we kind of can see where the Act 1 index is going, where PSERS is going. The Act 1 index currently for this year is at a 4.1%. Northern Lehigh's adjusted index is 5.5. The IFO projected our the weighted index for next year at 5%, the year after at 4.3, and the following year at 4. The Act 1 index is based on that state average weekly wage and the employment cost index. They use that information in order to decipher what they're going to set the Act 1 index at. PSERS, on the other hand, PSERS is the contribution rate projections for the 23-24 school year is at 34%. It is down. Last year it was at 35.26. They had some good return on money and some investment stuff. They brought it back down to 34% this coming school year. But it is projected to go up starting again next school year and continue to go up after that point in time again. Again, the contribution rate projections are based on the employees' contributions, the employer's contribution, as well as the market rate on return on investments that they can, once they put the money into the marketplace. So that is currently where we're going with Act 1 index and PSERS in a broad look.
Do they have a time frame for when they think PSERS will?
They were saying sometime after 28, 29. I think they took it back a little bit this year, so I don't know how long it's going to climb. They only went out as high as 2026 at this point in time, so they haven't given us anything past that point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next slide. So this slide here, again, is our district profile with a look back to the 2020-2021 school year of grade level enrollments. You'll see pretty much for the 23-24 school year, we're projecting that kindergarten's class size this year will be first grade's class size next year, and so on. Right now, we're estimating kindergarten class, it's still a little bit of a wild card, will be 110 to 130 students. So less than this year. This year was absolutely, I guess, what we sometimes call a bubble class. We believe a lot of that was because parents and guardians held children home due to pandemic-related issues. With, maybe they were a little hesitant to put them in school yet last year, and they were able to keep them at home yet. This year, we're projecting it will be less than that 144 mark. Okay, next slide, please. This is just all that information really in more of a visual display. We do this each year because you can kind of see trends a little bit. You'll notice that the numbers are pretty steady across the buildings. Again, next year, that's our best shot at what we think we're going to come in. Again, with Peters being the one where it could, shift up or down, plus or minus 10 students because of the incoming kindergarten class. Dr. Stoker, I think the last time Mr. Schneiderite gave us an update, we had about, was right around 100 children at some point in the enrollment process. Either they actually came in for their kindergarten intake, or they've at least made contact with the kindergarten office to schedule appointments.
And it continues to grow.
And it continues to grow, which is kind of normal, and I think all of you are aware that even after the school year starts, it still ebbs and flows a little bit with people doing kind of last-minute registrations. Okay, next slide, please. Here's our employee profile. You'll see that there is a shift in the professional staff. The ELDP, so the staff member for English language learners, professional staff member. We currently have a half-time teacher on that team. And we really are strongly urging that to become a full-time teacher next school year because our English language learner population continues to rise. And then at the bottom there, the two, so that you'll see the overall number is adjust as well to 261. Okay. I'm going to review, you're aware that we have a number of positions that are funded through ESSER money. That list there, kind of the top half of the slide, are all the ESSER positions. We're recommending, when we spend probably about the last 2 months, maybe even more than that, kind of talking about what are our most dire needs for staffing for next year. And we have, a lot of different suggestions have come in, requests. At our last administrative meeting, we went through it one more time and said, kind of what are as an administrative team, are we recommending are our must-dos? And we must, in our opinion, we would strongly encourage the board to keep that administrative position into our operating budget, which is our Director of Educational Technology, Curriculum, and Instruction. I think the strides that we've made over the last couple of years in our curriculum and as well as educational technology are a direct result of that, the work that administrator is doing. Also, one of the district-wide technology integration specialists. They are critical to staff learning how to use a good number, many components of the technology that we've brought in. Direct Canvas training, direct Canvas support, IXL training, IXL support. For them to be able to go and give tutorial sessions right to teachers, even outside of the whole group sessions. But also that employee helps us craft our training sessions. Next, we have, if I may just finish this one thought, an ESL paraeducator that is currently funded through ESSER funding. We believe that paraeducator, which works really across the buildings in the school district, should remain. So in other words, when the ESSER funding goes away because of our growth in English language learners, we believe that that paraeducator is critical to delivering services to children as well. So, Mr. Dissler.
Obviously, it would be costs related to that.
I'm sorry?
Cost.
The cost,
Costs
sure.
related to,
Sure, absolutely. So right now for, let's see here. So, and let me backtrack as well, because there's also, we have had, and you've received these updates in the weekly update that goes out. We have 2 students that are currently in the district right now that moved in with special needs, that in their IEP, which we received from the sending school district, have one-to-one paraeducator with them. We need to be able to fill those positions. We're struggling with that a little bit, but we've actually pulled people from what they're really supposed to be doing to work with these children to support their needs. 2 of them each at, say, $25,000 is $24,897 per position. The ELDP paraeducator is the same cost, $24,897, so approximately $25,000. The administrative position, all in for salary and benefits, and I'll look to Mrs. Molatoris for this number here.
Yeah, 2 seconds here. So next year, that number, are we talking all-in benefits, everything, soup to nuts?
Yes.
219, almost $220,000, $219,754 is with next year's salary increase. So that's
just
what's
the
in the budget.
administrator, or was that
Just
the
one?
That's just the administrator.
And how much was that one?
$219,754.
So there's those support staff positions, the TIS position, the administrative position, and administration is also recommending a 4th school police officer. So we have, that would then expand our school police department to 4 police officers for basically a 1-to-1 ratio per officer per building.
And do you have that as well?
And how much?
So the school police officer would be, and this is if they come in and take family benefits as
Yep.
well, $87,545.
Are these numbers in the budget you're gonna propose, or are they
Yes.
in?
The police officer is not, nor is the 2 special ed IEP ones that just moved in. Those I have not added yet.
Are we still able to apply for any grants for the school police officer?
Yeah, every opportunity we get for grant funding, whether it's, so we get funding through Title IV, which we look to apply towards the cost of school police officers. Then we also look to apply for grants that often come out, like through PCCD, to specifically pay for school police officers. We were successful in receiving one for $75,000 this year. I'm sorry?
From PDE Safe Schools.
From PDE Safe Schools Grant, thank you, Dr. Stoker, to subsidize the funding of one of those positions. So recommending that we keep the Director of Educational Technology, Curriculum and Instruction, strongly recommending that we keep that. Strongly recommending that we're keeping the Technology Integration Specialist. For compliance reasons, we have to fill the 2 special education positions. For need, we are recommending that we fill the ELDP paraeducator position. For safety and security reasons, we are recommending that we add additional police officer.
So we would assume to keep the other 5 positions through the 2023-24 school year currently, based on ESSER funding, is that correct?
Which other 5? The ones, like the 2 PS para, yes.
The 2 and 2, the first 2
Yep.
paraeducators, and then I'm assuming the Peters Elementary classroom teacher? Is that what
Yes.
that one is?
So-
So we would keep those through ESSER?
We would keep those through ESSER through next year.
Correct.
Right, and then we
then
would have to make decisions after
reevaluate
that.
after that.
Yes.
My concern is looking at that, if we take 5 of those spots away, we're back 5 years in our staffing. And hearing that we have a kindergarten class currently at 144 students, a potential of 120 to 130 again at Peters for a kindergarten class, and the additional need, I'm really concerned that we need to start thinking largely to figure out how those spots fit into our budget. I'm more concerned about those that are that are touching our students just as much as the ones that you've indicated.
They're all extremely important
Exactly.
to the work that we do.
And I think we as a board need to think about that, because that's concerning if we go back to 5 years ago, when we look at the number of staff we have at our district.
Matt, can I just clarify? So the positions you have up there, those will all be covered by ESSER for this current budget year that we're,
The budget that we're
Looking to do-
building, yes,
Yeah,
the
that's all
23,
through
24 school year.
okay. And the police officer, though, is not.
He is not, that position, he or she does not yet exist, so there's no money for that position yet. We would like to have the position approved and funded for the upcoming school year.
Can you give a rationale for that?
Yes, absolutely. Safety, security, and to cut down on critical response time in all of our school buildings. God forbid that there is an event where somebody wants to come in and hurt our children. We need to make sure that really there's somebody on site.
Is that what you meant for that question?
Kind of.
Kinda?
Kind of.
Surprised me you asked that.
No, I was just trying to.
So we should prepare them for 2025 to look for another 388,000 in our budget.
We're going to continue to need adjust funding.
More than that
to
if all
address
these
the-
Well,
positions are
somewhere
staying.
near that.
Correct.
Yeah.
But this is just thinking ahead, this is not next year's budget.
No.
There's
So
not
the-
a penny for any of that in next year's budget at this time.
All those positions
Are funded.
are funded through ESSER.
Right.
What we're recommending, though, is next year, we add a school police officer,
Correct, and that's not it.
that we have money in to fill those 2 special education paraeducator positions, and that we add money in for that ESL paraeducator. We would like to kind of shift that into next year's budget so we can continue to start building up towards when all the ESSER money is gone, that position's already built into the budget, so we don't have to, and I think this is kind of what
Yes.
you're trying to say, we
That's what
don't
I'm trying
have
to
to
say.
actually take a step back in
Correct.
services.
So as much as, and I'm sorry, so as much as we're looking at this year's coming budget, our job can't be to look at 1 year in front of us. Our job has to look out into the future, because all we do every time we make a decision on this budget is determine what's gonna happen a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, because every time we don't get something, that's money we can't get. And things are going in place, and when we do stuff like this and put money in through ESSER and grants and things like that, that puts us behind the 8 ball, which is great that we did for the period of time that we did, but we're behind the 8 ball now, putting this money into our budget coming up, if these are positions that we need. And hearing what administration's saying, these are positions we need based on the current student capacity we have.
Based on the current capacity enrollment that we have, the needs of the students, which I kind of put a little bit different than enrollment
Yep.
numbers, right? There's the straight numbers. And then
Right.
some of the children that are coming in have very specific needs above and beyond a typically performing student.
Correct.
As well as, I believe, what I think have been very impactful work that we've been doing over the last 2 to 3 years to address curriculum assessment, curriculum instruction and assessment needs. Okay. There has, and again, just, I'm going to put it out there because there were suggestions, there has also been a request for our elementary buildings where we continue to see a very high level of need behaviorally for our students. And we've received a request for, I don't want to label it as this, but this is what it's often labeled, like an elementary kind of dean of students. We are looking to see if there's a way that we can meet that need without an additional position. But please know that that request has come in. Right now, we're looking through everything to see if there's a way that we can do it without an addition of an actual position.
Can you explain that role?
So,
When I think of dean of students, it's, I'm
So-
seeing something different and I'm not sure
sure,
if it's.
so Sometimes a person in that position will be, it's not an administrative position, right? So it wouldn't be added into the Act 93 agreement, but oftentimes a person in that role is given direct support to principal, school counselors, faculty, really working with students, ideally to be proactive, so to address needs before they even happen. And by needs, I mean behaviors in this particular case. Working with parents, kind of supporting them to help them be consistent with how we're intervening with behaviors at home. And then oftentimes at the upper levels, it's discipline. You know, it's actually, you know, this is, you have an office referral, this is going to be whatever the discipline is for that office referral. So it's that kind of the whole continuum of addressing behaviors proactively through if the behavior actually occurs, and then there has to be some sort of consequence afterwards. Ideally, I would like to see, and then we've kind of talked through this with the administrative team, that role be someone that really focuses as much energy as possible on the proactive end, but there's going to be times when there's discipline involved. So right now, our school counselors are not able to meet a lot of the other requirements of their role because they are giving direct support to students and the principal when the children are having behaviors. We would like to see if there's a way that we can kind of release that pressure a little bit, and that's going to take extra hands, but we're seeing if we can do that in a way that doesn't actually require an extra position. So we're still working through that process. But I just want you to be aware that that's one of the requests that came in. There were other requests that, you know, administratively we said we're not comfortable bringing these up right now. And by request, I mean positions.
What role does the resource officer play in any of that, or aren't they involved in the things you're
Yeah.
talking about?
So they are. However, we try to be very clear in that we truly want them to be ambassadors. We want them to be proactive. We want them to build strong relationships with kids, our students, whether they're in kindergarten or whether it's a junior at the high school. And they're doing that. We see them doing that. We see our students responding to them very well. But at the end of the day, they're not educators. And really what we're looking to do is have somebody with that kind of education training as well to work with our students. Very rarely would I say to, you know, an SPO, hey, I want you to call a parent and have a conversation with them. Because that's not their role, right? Their role is to kind of keep a safe learning environment for all of us. I don't necessarily want them to be out talking to the parents, calling the parents, that type of stuff. That's something that a dean of students would be able to do. One of the things that a dean of students type role would be able to do.
And this would just be at Peters?
No, it would be, if there's a way that we could figure it out, there's a way that I would like to see to get that extra support to Peters and Slayington. Okay. Next slide, Steve.
So this is looking at our prior year's composite of data between expenditures and revenues. The expenditures are in the red, the revenues are in the blues. Those are through 2018-19 through 21-22. Those are hard, fast numbers after our books were closed, where we ended the year. Again, 2021 and 21-22. Remember, we did refinance those bonds. We didn't really make bond payments, so that's really where that $2 million increase had came from. The fact that we didn't pay our $3 million worth of bond payments for those 2 years. This year, currently, I'm anticipating roughly using about $307,000 out of our fund balance to balance this year's budget. Again, that's early projection numbers, looking at kids that are enrolled in charter schools and where I think that's going to fall. Information that we received for a mid-year reconciliation for CLIU, for kids that are outplaced, outplaced students that are currently outplaced, not in a charter school, and what we're being charged for them on a monthly basis. So I'm estimating somewhere around $307,000 we'll probably be using out of that fund balance to balance the budget this year. I will continue to update that number though as we move through May and June to hopefully nail down that number a little bit better. If we do end up the year using $307,000 worth of fund balance, we'll end our fund balance roughly 14.3 million, almost 14.4 million. Currently, we have about 14.676, I believe is the number that we currently have in our fund balance. Any questions? Go ahead, Stephen. So this is just a graph of where, a line graph of where our fund balance has gone. Again, you see that upward slope from 2020 through 2022, but again, that's because we didn't pay our bond payments in those years. This year, we should probably see a slight dip, and then depending upon what we do with the budget and if we're going to be using any fund balance to balance the 23-24 budget as well, you'll see that come down if that's the will of the board. Questions on fund balance? Next slide, Stephen.
Okay, for Peters Elementary School, we're recommending that, we take one of this year's kindergarten teaching positions and slide it to first grade to kind of travel along up through the grades with the larger kindergarten class. We're also looking at re-examining all of our special teacher schedules across the district to see if they can better serve building needs. We've been kind of working through this and saying, is there room in their schedules where we can kind of deploy them, where they're not necessarily, or at least all of them wouldn't necessarily have to be kind of sharing buildings, that type of stuff. We're still working through that. You'll see that that particular kind of bullet item there will appear on each school level slide. We are not recommending any sort of budgetary increase for materials or programs at Peters Elementary School. Next slide, please. Very similar for Slating Elementary School. We do need to fill that special education paraeducator position for IDEA compliance. So that's a student that's currently in there, and then we have another student that is ours who also moved into our district, who has written into their IEP a paraeducator. That student is actually attending an IU classroom located within our schools, but we are still also, we need to get that position filled. Again, re-examining special schedule teachers across the district, and we are also recommending no budgetary increase for materials or programs. Next slide, please. For the middle school, again, taking a look at the special teacher schedules, no budgetary increase for materials or programs. We are not recommending any additional building-specific staff for Northern Lehigh Middle School. And thank you, Steve. So we have this is another position that we still need to fill at the high school, a student with a very high level of needs. Look at the special teachers, and then no budgetary increases for materials or programs at the high school building. We are taking a very close look at, so far we have 4 retirees. One of them will be 4 teacher retirees. One of them will be appearing on Monday night's agenda. So those positions we are taking a very close look at to see if we want to continue to use them in the same way, or if we would want to try to repurpose all of the position or even just a part of the position to help us better meet student needs across the district. That continues to be an ongoing process right now when we run kind of different scenarios to say, right now, course selections are projected to be this at the high school. What does that mean for, the recent retiree? Is there a way that we can better use that position in maybe a different subject area? So those type of conversations are ongoing. And I'm going to turn it back to Sherry.
All right, so 23-24, as I built the budget, these are some of the concerns that we're sitting there with our expenditure side of the budget. So again, we have our cost drivers, salaries. We are in the middle of a negotiation years with our professional staff, so depending upon where that plays out, we'll have possibly more of an impact on our budget. Our medical increased by 12.5% this year. And of course, every time salaries go up, so does your Social Security and the district's responsibility to pay that. LCTI, we have built in $100,000 increase to LCDI to send high school students to the academic center. This has been a request from, I believe, students, right? Students and staff that wanted that for students to have the opportunity to go to the academic center. $100,000 will get us roughly about 13 students to go there. A school of our size, roughly it's between 10 and 15 students. The process of determining what students will be allowed to go there is still in working stages. But I have increased the budget, the $100,000 for the academic center. So if the board does agree and in support of that, and administration is recommending that that happen, we will open up another opportunity for some of our high school students to attend the academic center at
So Sherry,
LCTI.
you're increasing it to 100,000.
Correct.
What was covered previously with none?
Oh, I'm sorry, I shut up.
No, we cut the academic center quite a few
Oh, we
years
did?
ago.
Okay.
So the academic center is the full
Full
day
day.
program.
Okay.
And that's what we
Correct.
voted to put back on
Yeah.
the table.
Yeah,
Because I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we're one of the only districts in,
we're the only
The only
district that
to
does
not offer it.
Well, that's good then.
Correct.
So we decided we wanted to put it back, and that was the cost.
Yep.
We knew was the
$100,000.
potential coming.
And how many students with that?
The preliminary number that they gave us per cost per student, that would allow us to send 13 students.
How would that affect class, like class subjects and so forth?
They would be spread, so tentatively, the criteria that we came up with, we would prioritize seniors, juniors, sophomores, freshmen would not be eligible to go. So it would be, those 13 students would be spread over potentially those 3 grade levels. Students take different courses within the high school, so chances are it's probably 1 or 2 students in a course.
So it's not enough to say the teaching position.
CLIU, last year, just so everybody's aware, and I say last year as in this school year budget, 22-23, there was going to be, my estimate that I received towards the end of last year said our estimate for the CLIU program would be roughly about $1 million, slightly over $1 million. Mid-year reconciliation came out at $1.5 million. So there's like $500,000 more of increase, and that is, we had 2, Shelley, high-need students that moved into our district in programs that are very costly programs. So again, I'm at 1.53, so I have to, and these are students that this isn't their senior year. So if they stay in our district, we're gonna have this continued cost. So I needed to increase the CLIU budget by $500,000 in order to cover the cost of those needs of those students. Charter school, again, is an increase of roughly about $200,000. Again, that goes up every year because it's based on your expenditures that you have in your budget. From year after year is what they use to determine how much that they're allowed to charge you for sending your students there, which is an ongoing battle because they basically don't, and I must wholeheartedly agree with this, we should be paying the same amount as Parkland pays to send their students, as Northampton sends to send their students to charter schools, and it's not like that. No matter where your expenditures are, you pay based on that for sending your students to charter schools. So again, we have about a $200,000 increase. You're going to see a slide, a couple slides from now. I think we've increased about 10, I think it's roughly around 10 students this year that have left and went out to charter schools. Outplaced students, we have seen an increase in our outplaced students based on fractions at building levels where we've had to outplace students. That is again up, that's roughly increased about $150,000 this past year. On the flip side of that, we do have the cost reduction of the retirement. PCERS went down roughly about $66,000 this year from last year. So ending 22-23, when I built the 23-24 budget, because it went down to 34%, I was able to reduce that budget by $66,000. And again, April 28th, we will have our fuel and diesel unleaded gasoline bids. They're coming in. We anticipate we're going to be able to decrease that budget. We have slightly decreased it already, but I'm hoping we might be able to take a little more out of it. If you remember last year, I think the board decided to go with that fixed rate at like 5 something a gallon. Obviously, foresight. On the flip side of things, Greg has noticed that we have met our commitment and the price is now rack rate, so we're not still paying that 5 something a gallon. So it is coming the other way, but we're anticipating we're going to be able to cut hopefully some more out of that budget as well.
Sorry, is that medical increase built in the fund balance?
Yes, built in the fund balance, yes.
And so is PSERS?
Yes. PSERS was reduction though, so when we go further into the budget presentation, I have us using some of the medical fund balance in order to offset that increase this coming year.
Okay, thanks.
And for the salaries, what did you use for those in the negotiating area? Did you use current, what they're at today?
Yes.
Or- okay.
No increase over that?
Slight increase over that. Mhm. That's it. I think you're taking this, right?
Okay, again, our charter school enrollment, you can see how that has risen over the years. We do have some students that come back to us, but it's not enough where we're actually kind of turning the corner, and we expect to see a steady decrease over the next couple of years. But I believe we've had 2 or 3 come back to Northern Lee High School District buildings this school year. Every little bit helps, but oftentimes we've even had a couple where students their families have moved into our district, never attended our schools because they were attending a cyber charter or a brick and mortar charter from wherever they moved from, and they're continuing with that, so that happens as well.
Matt, excuse me, what would happen if we somehow got that number in half? How much of a savings would that give us?
Probably $1 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're over $2 million in funding for charter schools.
Okay, next slide, please, Steve. This is just broken out between cyber charter schools with the blue line, regular education students, and special education students. And that's the cost.
That's the cost. So the blue line is $2.03 million. $30,000 is roughly what I'm estimating this year.
You see most of them are attending most of our students that are in a charter school, we're looking at the cyber charters, not necessarily that they're weighted towards the brick and mortar.
And that's on the next slide.
Yep, there you go. Oh, how about that? The next slide shows that there as well.
That really increased.
So we're spending about $1.4 million in cyber schools and about $180-some thousand in brick and mortar.
Next slide, please.
All right, so again, I did last year build our collection rate at 94%, and we did come in a little bit above 94%, so I am going to keep that again at 94% for this coming school year. Again, we passed that Act 1 resolution in January that said we were not going to increase over the index. So if you would decide to raise it to 5.5%, just throwing it out there, your additional money that you would get in tax revenue is $851,000. Federal revenues, I budgeted the same as we did for the 22-23 school year. Dr. Stoker will probably get information on that probably later on, April, beginning of May, something like that. So once those numbers come in, if I can increase that slightly, I will look at increasing the federal revenues for programs, for title programs and stuff. State revenues, they're budgeted currently at the 22-23 school district amount. Last year to this year, Because when I built the 22-23 budget, remember I based it on the 21-22 because we didn't know where we were going with that budget. And if you remember, the governor's budget last year was extremely aggressive. We were supposed to be getting like $600 and some odd $1,000 more in basic ed subsidy. We did see like almost $500 and some $1,000 in additional revenue. So that revenue is now in this budget because I now built it at what we received in 22-23. Current budget, he's saying potential $243,000 additional dollars in basic ed for us. Special education, $146,000 in additional revenues for us. He introduced a new school-based mental health block grant, which is $116,000, almost $117,000. The thing with that, though, is there'll be strings with that. So you're not going to be able to use that to offset any of your revenues or any of your expenses that we currently have in the budget. It's going to probably be used for mental health stuff. They're probably going to want you to build in programs and stuff that are going to support students, staff, and that kind of stuff with mental health issues. So that's going to be just an over and above. And that Ready to Learn block grant has been flat funded for probably about the last 5 to 7 years. So, and that is still staying in the budget at this point in time, flat funded.
I like how the state gives you these
There's
grants.
500 or 800
I know.
right there.
I know.
This will
If
be
he gives
easy.
it to us,
This
we're
will be
almost
easy.
there. Yeah.
I'm sorry.
I said, I like the way the state gives you those block grants, and then
Yeah.
you get used to those services, and then they pull them away, and now you gotta decide whether you're gonna continue those services and pay for it, or eliminate them. And obviously, going backwards is never a solution. And we've been dealing with that for a long time.
That's all right. Well, and that's exactly what Gail talked about with the ESSER funding. That's
See, that's
exactly what
funds.
happened.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, so this is what our current fund balance looked as of June 30th of 2022. So I anticipated we were going to use about $2.2 million in our fund balance this year. I'm roughly thinking probably around 307,000, somewhere in there. We passed our board resolution in November that set all of these, and these are the amounts that we were set at. And we have a fund balance currently right now on our books of $14,676,000. Go ahead, Stephen.
So the next two slides are kind of long-term project planning, fund balance utilization. We also identify some items as being potential expenditures for capital reserve expenses. The first 6, 7, 8 lines there are things that we've completed over the past couple of years. We've already committed to the facility upgrades for the baseball softball complex. That's going to be funded through the bond proceeds. Peter's Gym Wall, we're now recommending, we just had the company that actually has been servicing it for us, as well as a vendor if we were moved to replace it. We're now pushing that to the 24-25 school year. He's basically saying evaluate it kind of each year, and that we definitely have at least another year in it as long as we continue to maintain it. But that would be a $135,000 project if we were to replace that. That could be funded through capital reserve expenses because that's actually a physical part of the building. So that's why we would be able to, draw down funds from capital reserve. Large utility shed and pole funding, again, we would look to utilize capital reserve expenses, and we think it's probably best that in spring of this upcoming school year, we start the bidding process for that. We would probably need either an architect or an engineer to help us with it, and then help us at least minimally write the bid, and then put it out for bid, and then we can probably get a much better idea of how much it would actually cost. As we, put money into capital reserve, these are the type of projects that we're saying that we need to stay ahead of, or at least keep on our radar screen.
Where would that be located?
So right now, our current thinking is that, on the other side of the parking lots here, there's currently the large white pole building that's freestanding. Remove that, right? If it's not removed by the wind first, one of these times, remove that, and then build an extension off of the maintenance building kind of bus terminal structure, build an extension, or rather an addition off of that to go out to the footprint of where the current building is, but then also forward so it's then flush with the front of the bus terminal garage doors. And we believe with that square footage, we would have enough to kind of get all of our vehicles under cover, as well as storage for all the other equipment that our facilities department utilizes. We would have to probably move, like, I'm sure you've all noticed the big kind of bins for like rock salt and topsoil, that type of stuff. Our current thinking would be to kind of move that behind what is currently the bus terminal, behind their little annex building back there. Get all that back there, out of sight. Put in an addition on the current structure, meaning the bus terminal / actual maintenance building. Get rid of the old kind of freestanding pole building, maintenance building, and then re-level some of that also just for additional parking there. And I don't mean parking like we have out here, but just parking from when the guys are in and out of the buildings. And that would be most likely more of like a gravel lot type thing. I don't know that we would necessarily look to do to pave that.
We would use the assigned fund balance for
Um,
that?
Kind of. So, Sherry, I don't know if you kind of
Yeah.
want to give a thumbnail sketch of the difference between fund balance, assigned fund balance, and capital reserve.
Yep. So, if you remember, we just recently did our St. Luke's agreement, and St. Luke's was giving us donations or services from now on that wouldn't be charged as we get. So, and it was to help offset the cost of the baseball, softball field. But the problem is that's going to happen over the next 15 years that we're going to get this money. So what I have built into the budget is that the money that we would have paid for those services is still in there, but it's in there as a transfer into the capital reserve account, so that we can then use it to offset our costs for these other upcoming things, because it should have been used for the baseball field, but we had to stick a bond out to do that because they weren't giving us all the money up front for that. So capital reserve allows you to do capital expenditures to your building. So think of it as anything in your building that if you sold your building, you couldn't walk out with. So like a lot of the technology stuff, like servers and stuff like that, if we wanted to, we could take those servers out and move them to our new facility, hook them all back up and start working again. Things like your roofs, your paving of your parking lots, pole buildings, stuff like that you're not taking with you. They're going to stay on property. So that's the kind of stuff that you can pay for out of capital reserve. The wall out at Peters, again, it's a fixture, it's part of the building. HVAC systems, part of the building. Chillers, part of the building. Things that are part of the building we can pay out as capital reserve. So eventually, I think we need to, and what it'll end up doing is, like, when we look at that large utility shed, so we're going to start bidding that in spring of 2024. So let's just say we come up with a decent price, and in March we say, let's get moving on this. We want to have it up, ready to go come July 1. Well, if it's not part of the budget, we can't really do it without going for special approval. But we can move that money into capital reserve, and then you just you approve a board motion to pay something out of capital reserve moving forward. So eventually, I'm thinking we need to move some of our money that is in our fund balance over into capital reserve to offset these costs of these kind of bigger items that we're going to be doing in the near future.
And they can be assigned fund balances already, can be moved?
Yes, committed is the only thing that has to stay where it is. Assigned can be moved out.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Of the $2 billion for the softball field, is there going to be any bond money left over from that immediately? And was that money that we had also talked about putting toward the whole building?
Correct. So originally our bond for the baseball field was like $2 million, I think like $8,000, $7,000 was all we had in that. I invested some of it. I got about another $24,000 out of that when doing that. And I currently now have the over $2 million sitting in a full flex account where I'm earning 4.75, no, a little over 5% interest on it. Last month I got like another 11,000. So there is no money, but I'm hoping if it keeps going and this interest keeps going the way it is, probably by the time we're ready to start paying these bills, I might be close to having all of that, 1.7 or 2.17. So there wasn't, the anticipation was yes, but then we went to I think the outfield for the girls softball team, so we added that to it because we wanted fairness there. So there was a couple things that got added on after the fact that raised that price back up.
I understand that, so I just wanted to throw
Yep.
it there. I'll ask this question later. I don't want to get off track about investments and stuff. We'll talk about that later.
Okay.
And Sherry, why is it important to have a healthy fund balance? Because as a community member, I'm sitting here looking at $14 million. Whoa, well, let's just use that.
Right.
Explain what the detriments of that is.
Yeah, so if you end up depleting your entire fund balance, if you get to the point where you would need things like a roof or something like that, and you need it in a hurry, you wouldn't have fund balance to fall back on. So it's basically like your rainy day fund like you would have at your house. For any kind of spare of the moment, last minute things, these things that pop up that you all of a sudden need to pay for, you need to make sure you have money in order to do that. So that's basically what your fund balance is for.
Doesn't it affect their school rating?
It does. So every time we go out for a bond rating, we get based on how much we have in our fund balance. You really should have, I believe it's three to 4 months worth of operating capital in your fund balance, so that if the state doesn't give you money because they don't pass a budget, you can continue to pay your bills. And we don't have to go to the teaching staff and say, hey, everybody's salaries froze for the next 3 months till the state gives us our money. It gives you that money, that cushion that you need in case something happens. Because we are highly dependent on the federal government and the state government and them giving us our monies. Does that answer your question?
Yep.
Thank you.
So just to confirm, the 14 million you said was in fund balance, about, what is it, 2.5, 3 million almost is committed. So
Correct.
that means we really have 11 million roughly.
Yep. So
And
there's
1 month expenses are roughly 8.1 based on a $36 million. So it
It's a little
doesn't
bit
give
more
us
than
a
that.
whole lot of cushion
Correct.
when a few years ago the state didn't pass that budget for 3 months.
Correct.
And we did pay.
Correct. The only little bit of a plus to that to start with is in July 1, you have those tax dollars coming in. So those tax dollars will buy you a little bit more time. It was when you get into January, February, March, if you don't have a budget, where you could really start to hit a wall.
Right. Okay, thank you.
You know, I disagree with that. You know, I hear numbers like 5%, 7%, maybe 10 at the most.
With
But,
what?
budgetary reserve to keep, you know, so.
I know.
I'm not gonna go there, we're not
I
gonna fight
know.
about it. We just-
Okay, next slide, please, Steve. And here we have some things. Now you'll start to see fund balance listed for a number of these not capital reserve, and this is, you know, specifically what Mrs. Maltors was referring to. Zero-turn lawnmower, right? If we decide we want to move, the lawnmower's going with us. Same thing with the GEL. The GEL is like a bobcat or a skid steer type thing. Northern Lehigh Middle School furniture replacement. You'll see that we have middle school, the high school, Slatington and Peters spread out across the years again. We haven't forgotten about this. We know it's still a need, but there's certain things that we think we need to continue to prioritize over desks. Then there are the potentially a tennis court resurfacing or repurposing. That is really just unused space out there right now, and we're trying to figure out a way between potential capital reserve and outside donors to help us, and communicating with 2 outside donors that may be willing to help us do that, where we can get it so it's, you know, ideally minimal impact out of our capital reserve. But we're thinking all in a project there until we actually have somebody kind of spec it up for us. anywhere from $150,000 to $250,000 to do it, so it's a safe playing surface. We're kicking around the ideas right now of kind of like a multi-use type thing, where it could be net games like either tennis or pickleball, but also basketball, outdoor basketball lighting courts as well. So it could be like a multi-purpose service. We would have to figure that out. Maintenance truck with a utility box. We believe we're about 3 years away from having to get a new one right now. I'm sure you've all seen our big box truck that drives around the community delivering to the different schools, running and picking up supplies and materials for us, as well as we continue to monitor the chillers at the high school. Those were installed in, I believe, 2006 or 2008. We just had them inspected again, and they're saying that we should be good to go out to about 26, 27 school year. That would be capital reserve. And then the last two here, I'm sure you recall, over the past few years, we've had all of our parking lots in the district, new seal coating and crack repair. Well, that cycle would start again in the 28-29 school year for the middle school and high school parking lots. And then 29-30 school year would be Slatington, Peters, and the stadium. And that's the same sequence we did them in the most recent time. Okay. All right, next slide, please. Our Northern Lehigh Middle School facility considerations. We're going to have a serious conversation over the next. Probably want to start it earlier rather than later, but having conversation about, do we want to transition 6th grade to the middle school at some year? Do we want to renovate the interior and exterior of that building? Do we want to renovate the interior and exterior of that building with an addition so we can, more readily receive 6th grade? Or would we want to consider doing new construction? These are not answers or directions that I am looking for now, but I need to start getting it out there in front of everyone, because that building is probably our highest need building right now. I often receive feedback from our community members that, in their words, not mine, but I don't disagree with them, it's an eyesore when you go by it, with the exterior of it and the inside of it as well. Hallways, tiling on the hallways, it's the 70s. So just some things that we may need to continue to think about, potentially even a feasibility study to see what it would look like if we were to do 3 grade levels at Peters, 3 grade levels at Slatington, 3 grade levels at the middle school, and then a traditional 9 through 12 at the high school. Middle school model is traditionally based on 3 grade levels, 6th, 7th, and 8th. We kind of have like a hybrid of that right now. So just, again, not looking for any direction on this, other than, is this something that you want us to kind of maybe put a little bit more purpose into trying to get information and updating the board as it comes in? Talk about it towards the end here. Okay. And I'll turn it back over to Mrs. Baltors.
So the 23-24 budget, we have total expenditures of $38,296,000, and our revenues, we have built in fund balance of $294,000. That is for the 12.5% increase in healthcare. So I am recommending that we use at least that much out of fund balance in order to offset those healthcare increases. So our total revenues are roughly around $37 million. That is not with any kind of a local tax increase built in at this point in time. So right now, if we use the $294 from fund balance to cover the healthcare increases, our budget shortfall is still $1.2 million. Depending upon what kind of a tax increase we would decide to settle on, that would end up coming down. And then again, if the governor's budget passes, that we have anything along those lines with increased funding there, it would also lower that number as well.
So
Is there a time frame so we would hear from the government about those new extra funds?
They have till June 30th to pass their budget.
And ours is due,
By June 30th, but we normally pass it the first week at the June board meeting. Yep. They're supposed to pass it by June 30th, but they don't have to pass it by June 30th. On the other side,
we do.
we have to pass it by June 30th. Yep.
Yeah.
So Matt, when you write your check, it's Northern Lehigh School District, and we'll only need about 1.1.
Okay.
Next slide, Stephen. This is just what our expenditures look like in a bar graph. Again, 65.99% of our district budget is the salaries and benefits, and which obviously, as we all know, does equal district recurring costs from year to year. And that would be everything from the light green bar to the left is everything that is salaries and benefits. Next slide, Stephen. And then this is our revenues. So locally, 20.38% of or 20.38 million comes locally. That is from things like definitely taxes, it's EIT taxes, it is from little things also like our revenues that we receive at sporting events, that kind of stuff, per capita taxes, regular school district real estate taxes, all of that is rolled into your local taxes. State is then what the state gives you for your budget, and then federal and other is federal is our federal program stuff, and then others are just other we have to every year when we do the leases, other falls under the leases, so the auditors book and other revenue, and then they offset that with the expense for that lease. So you show it as other revenue, but it's nothing we really get. We get it in a piece of equipment. And then, of course, if we would end up using that $294,000 worth of fund balance for medical increases, that's the little bit of fund balance that you're seeing there right now. Go ahead, Stephen. So again, I'm anticipating that we're going to use about $307,000 in fund balance, so we'll end at about a 14.3. You can see where healthcare, I think that was originally at 800 and some thousand. I took the 300 and some out of there, 294 out of there. Anticipated if we are at that shortfall of 1.2. So if we take everything out of fund balance and no tax increase, this is what we would look at, but then we would end our fund balance at the end of next school year. If we used all of the 1.5, we'd be down somewhere around 12.7 in our fund balance.
I apologize, we mislabeled the top of that slide there.
Oh, yeah, we did.
That's the wrong year, so
Yes.
we will correct that
We will
prior
correct
to
that.
posting this presentation publicly.
Yes.
so that's at the end of this.
That would be at
school
the
year.
end of June of 30th of 23, correct.
And then
And I
where,
just changed it.
so where would, is that the only thing that changes on there?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct, yep. So I'm estimating our ending fund balance at the end of 22-23 school year being somewhere around 14.3. And then again, if we use in the yellow to balance the 23-24 budget, and we use all that, you take that off of your total at your fund balance at the bottom, we would be somewhere around 1.27, ending at the end of the 23-24 if we used everything out of fund balance.
What's the recommended percentage of fund balance to keep?
The unassigned has to be less than 8%. Again, fund balance, they say you should have at least 3 to 4 operating months of budget in order to your operating expenses.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Stephen. So again, the tentative big picture, there's our expenditures, there's our revenues at 36 million. Budget shortfall is with the 1.556. Again, I'm recommending we're using 294,000 for healthcare, leaving us with that shortfall of 1.262. And there's that number. If we would end up using everything out of fund balance, the 1.54, we'd be ending at 12.811. 12.7, I was close. 12.811 was how we would end the 23-24 school year with our fund balance.
What was potential additions for the state budget this year?
Sure.
Was there special ed money and?
Yep, special ed money was around 104,000 or 124 or 49. Hold on, let me go back to that slide. Sorry.
600,000 something?
I
Yeah.
have a 500 or 600,000.
Yeah, 243, 844 for basic ed, 146, 621 for special ed. You can't count on that mental health block grant money because that will have strings attached to it on what you can use it for.
Is this the first year that Shapiro was in?
Yes, this is the first year.
So 1 mil of taxes brings in how much revenue?
Yeah, I would say somewhere about 600,000.
Shut up, Matt.
No,
It's not
somewhere
up to
around
you right now.
600,000.
And what
Yeah.
percentage
Actually,
increase
I-
would that be on the budget if you raised it 1 mil?
Actually, Bob, if we go to, I think, the next slide, Stephen?
Those are the dollars I was
Yeah, those are the
about.
two numbers that she had just asked for. One more slide, Stephen. All right, so we cannot increase taxes over the 5.5%, which is $851,573 dollars. So Lehigh County with a millage rate at the 5.5% would give them a millage rate of 25.34. So Lehigh County, on 149,000 median assessed value, their tax bill would go up by $189. A mill in Lehigh County is worth $662,000. A mill in Northampton County, though, is only worth $42,000.
So what, if we raise, hypothetically, we raise taxes a mil, what is the percentage increase on taxpayers of the overall budget? I see 5.5 gives us
825.
800,000, so you're
It's a
looking
little
at
over a mil.
4%. 1 mil will raise like 4% of the revenue, is what I'm saying.
A bit, yeah.
So if we raise taxes a mil, taxpayers are gonna take a 4% hit on
Yes.
taxes.
Yes.
That's kind of what I'm trying to
Yes.
drive at.
Yes.
Okay, gotcha. Hypothetically, I'm saying, just so.
Yes.
Okay, I see my name in the headlines.
Kurt suggests 5.5.
Flower company moves into Kurt's house.
Okay, Stephen, next slide, please. So again, we're recommending, administration is recommending that we utilize fund balance for healthcare increases. Consider a tax increase in conjunction with utilization of fund balance to close the gap, in addition to generating some revenue for upcoming years, right? Kind of that long view, right? Kind of this year, the following year, the following year. Continue to look for grant revenue opportunities to fund positions such as a school police officer or social worker, and continue to search for expenditure saving options such as utilities, transportation, and staffing. And let's see, I think that is it for this evening. That is it.
I just have one more question. So, looking at our budget this year, potentially, what might be some unused monies from this year? Or are we saying we're gonna spend it all, which usually never happens, that could be transferred into this year? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't think we're gonna end up with a surplus of revenues over our expenditures.
Okay.
That's what I'm saying, I think we're gonna finish maybe around 307,000, but I'll know more as we get closer, when I get into May and June.
Gotcha.
And more of those bills come in and I can project closer where I
Okay.
think we're gonna be. Right now, I'm estimating somewhere around 307.
Okay, thank you.
And a lot of that is honestly because of the things like the increase in the special ed cost of
Oh, I understand.
value, that, a lot of them were huge increases.
One
that
student can
happened.
blow your budget, we all know that.
Sure, Halloween, delinquent tax payments. How are we looking at that now?
Oh, you mean the people paying in
Right.
delinquent?
Mhm.
Our collection rate has been increasing in the last couple of years, that's why I raised it to 94%. Our tax in bills went out probably about 2 weeks ago from Portnoy, so we should start seeing, them roll.
Yeah, I got it.
Yeah, I got mine today.
Wonderful. They came in the mail today.
Oh, they're here today?
Oh, mine was.
I'll make sure I pay this one on time. $11 cost me 36.
So, it's a lot of information to digest this evening for the kind of proposed budget for next year. We're open to questions, feedback. If you're ready this evening and you want to kind of talk about, we kind of listed a number of positions in there outside of the must-dos, like those 2 special education positions. I believe we must also, that ELDP half-time teacher going to a full-time teacher. But if you would want to offer any direction to the administration about should we keep in make that ELDP para-educator part of the operating budget. Should we include a school police officer in the budget? Any thoughts on that, if anybody would want to share out tonight, so we can say, okay, this can stay in for the next presentation, or we can remove it, or if you want to just say, Matt, I need some time to think about it until
My opinion,
Monday
Matt,
evening.
I agree with Gail's comment. We don't want to go back. We want to stay where we need to be. So if we drop those positions, we're going to be back in that same situation again. And we don't want to be there. So I'm in favor for keeping that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Visler.
Matt, excuse me, so the one thing that's not in that budget is contract additions, correct?
Correct. We know that we're going to have to adjust for however the negotiations are currently going. Or rather, I should say how they end.
Right.
Yes.
So when does that go into effect, the new contract?
I'm going to answer that, and Mrs. Culp, I'm not being snarky when I say this, but it may sound like that. It's whenever negotiations are finished. We honestly don't know. I would like that our, the Teachers Association and the school board can come to terms by June 30th.
Okay, that's what I wanted to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
I just wanted to make sure I said that in a way that didn't
Well,
sound.
yeah, and that's why,
Yeah.
I just didn't know the timing. That's what I was asking. Okay.
I would also say, and I hope Tim doesn't throw a rock at me, but I think it's totally inappropriate for us to talk about, quote, how much money we're putting in the budget for salary increases when we haven't completed that yet.
Yeah.
So I think those conversations need to be done perhaps executive session or somewhere, but rather than at a public session.
I just wanted to find out what wasn't
I understand,
included.
but
what
as far as
wasn't- I got you.
coming up with a number, I don't think this is an appropriate time to do it, in my opinion.
That's fine.
So,
I'll be honest, I'm for a 4th police officer at our district buildings. Seeing what's going on and protecting our staff and our students, I think has to be first and foremost in some of those. If you would ask me to vote on a 4th police officer, my answer would be yes.
I would have to support that too.
As much as I don't want to, I would definitely have to support it. Things have changed from when I was in school, and even when my son was in school recently. Everything has changed, so it's crazy to think of Northern Lehigh having 4 police officers for what we have, but the way things are going in this world, we can't take a chance.
I have to say, they do a lot more than just
That's right.
monitor. They are involved in the schools, the kids see them, they're a positive impact.
I've been reading all the things they send through and, how they're interacting with the kids, and I think that's fabulous.
They read Dunkin' Donuts
And Chief Jones, stresses that with them. My word always comes back to ambassadorship, right? You're here to represent the district, you're here to interact with children, you're here to interact with the staff. And safety and security, like you can't separate the two of them in my mind. So.
No, I think they've done a lot of good for the district.
Well, I think they've done a lot of good for the kids seeing police officers in a positive light. I mean, was it Officer Jones that came and played, or is playing the bagpipes?
bagpipes?
I missed it, so, because I wasn't at the
That
building.
was cool.
But I mean,
I have some video if you want to see.
I mean, those kind of things really impact the kids, and they see police officers as
In a different
real
light.
human beings. So it's good.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I think it helps to build the trust between law enforcement and kids, and then they can grow up to feel not like they are threatened by them.
And if we can get a grant, that would be awesome, but I understand. And Tanya, you've gotten us so many grants. God. I
There's
can't
an
imagine what we would do without those, frankly, to keep things going.
Thank you. Their expectation is that Title IV is supposed to go up, but we have no idea if that's actually going to happen or how much that will be. But there's an expectation that there should be a little bit of money there, but not enough to cover a full police officer.
So I do want to say that there is a Northern Lehigh graduate who is working for Governor Shapiro currently. So I'm going to reach out to him and see if we can get a little bit. So, you're welcome. Yeah.
I'm certainly in favor of the other police officer. It hurts me to have to say that we have 4 officers in Northern Lehigh, but I think it's just necessary, and I would go along with that. I've always said the kids are first, and I don't want to cut back on any of the positions. But am I saying something I shouldn't? Oh, I thought you were waving at me.
I was brushing something off there.
Am I saying something I'm not supposed to?
Yes, that was the.
Oh, okay. Where was I? Oh, kids come first. I don't want to see us cutting back on positions if we don't have to. I guess I might have a different opinion on how we pay for some of those positions, and that would be my only disagreement with where the budget goes. Not so much what's in it, but how we pay for it. And I'll let it go at that at the moment. You know, I don't want to get into some of those squabbles, but, you know, I think I don't want to curse either, but I think it's damn time that the state steps up and starts to come up with their money. They've been sued. And it's like, it's just unbelievable that they're not coming up with their share. And we're what, like, I don't know, 40th out of 50 states in terms of state funding or something like that. It's way, way up there. And it's like, come on, Governor, come on, representatives, let's do something to help the kids in Northern Lehigh, and that's what I'm looking for, so.
I'd just like to say, and I hate to blur the lines as when I sit here as a principal versus my residency in town, but I'm also a parent. My stepson attends Peters, and I pay taxes here like a lot of people in the room. So just thank you to administration and the board for considering the 4th officer as a parent and taxpayer. I think it's a worthwhile endeavor. I just want to say thank you for that consideration.
Thanks for bringing that perspective. Because I think we're going to hear a lot of that.
I have one quick question, Sherry, and I know we've had discussions about this before. With respect to how much money we have currently in CDs and how much we have as kind of cash on hand, and I realize you need a certain amount of liquidity. I'm not disputing that.
Yep.
But you know, I'm seeing stuff like in the newspaper where local banks are offering like, you know, 5.5% CDs for 4 months and things like that. Have we taken a look at all about maybe investing some of that in short-term securities?
So I currently am in a full flex account at Pislock with about $9 million of our dollars.
Okay.
And that is currently over 5% right now.
Okay.
So it's full flex, and they're giving it to you at the CD rates, but you're not locked into a CD for a percentage of time.
Okay.
So they're currently following what the Treasury bonds are offering, and they're giving you that on the full flex account. So I think it's just over 5%.
And you said you have what, 9?
9 million,
million.
yeah.
Okay,
The other roughly 3 to 4 million is sitting out at NEFs. And again, we've worked an agreement with them,
I know
and
you
that's.
need liquidity, et cetera, et
Yep,
cetera.
yep,
You know,
and
I don't wanna go
it's
there, but-
just, I don't want to pull everything out of there either because they do some good stuff for us too,
I
so.
understand.
Yeah,
so-
but no, I was looking to once those bonds came due the end of February, actually February 14th, I reached back out to Pisloff to say, what are we looking at, what do we have? And he said, I'm gonna recommend that you go into the full flex. He goes, because you're getting the same amount, we're giving you the same amount of interest that you get in the marketplace, and you're not locking your money in for a certain period of time. If that starts to come down, then I'll look at locking some of it in.
Lock it back in again?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can we get a printout of that? or
Yep,
where the
sure.
money is? Yeah,
Yep.
okay.
I think I gave it to you at the last one, at the last.
There was some of that there, but it wasn't, I thought there was still like 12 million that was not invested, but I just.
Yeah, but that was in the full flex at
Okay,
Pisloff.
9 of that was in the full flex, but,
Yes.
okay, but I didn't see that as part of, was that part of your presentation? If it was, I missed it.
No, it was it's in the board update. It's in the board packet every month when you do
Okay,
your.
I didn't see that it was in
Yeah.
full flex, okay.
Yeah,
Very
it's
good.
it's a full flex account, so I was just updating it today to put in for this month,
Okay,
so, yeah.
thank you.
It'll be in with the board reports.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I figured you were, but I just.
No problem.
I have to really process.
It's a lot.
So, we'll continue to refine it. We'll bring it back. Thank you for the direction that you give to us this evening. And the next time that kind of this length of a presentation will be shared out will be at the May Finance Committee, then the May board meeting, and we'll look for the passing of the kind of proposed preliminary budget in May, and then the passing of a final budget in June, and we'll continue to work at it.
Thanks for the detail.
Mr. Lincoln, that.
Yes, thank you, sir. Thank you. We're gonna, education, right, yeah. We're gonna transition to the Education Committee. And, let's see, Mr. Kern, if you wanna open a meeting?
Sure. I'd like to open up the Education Committee meeting. Looks like we have the shortest agenda tonight, which is good, and a change. Dr. Stoker.
I'm actually going to hand the first one off to Dr. Link.
Thank you. We are.
First time,
That's
huh?
the very first time. I read.
Caught me off guard there, I'm sorry.
Our administration is proposing, we've been working with Mr. Rashevsky, Mr. Stroll, and some other key members in graduation planning, and we believe that we are through any uncooperative weather, which may force us to shift it. We are looking at Friday, June 2nd, for our seniors to graduate at 7 p.m. in Bulldog Stadium with a rain date of Saturday, and then if need be, Sunday, so the 3rd and 4th. It will most likely be in the morning if we have to do a rain date like we've done in previous years, but I don't necessarily want to set a time for the rain date yet because sometimes we need like late morning or even early afternoon. But right now, our target date is for June 2nd for the seniors to graduate. K through 11 would be in session then until Thursday, June 8th. And I'm looking for direction for this committee if they support that, and then it'll actually be on Monday night's agenda for board approval of the graduation date. Okay, thank you. And I will turn it back over for Dr. Stoker on spring state testing.
Thank you. That's really just a list of all of our PSSA testing and our Keystone exams that are coming up. So all of our state assessments are going to begin the earliest at the beginning of April, and then the Keystones will run through essentially May 23rd with makeups after that. So that's really just for reference for everybody. It's also posted on the school district website under our standardized testing schedule. That's updated in real time. That's all we have, Mr. Kern.
Sorry, pen
you're
died.
okay.
Got one. Thanks.
You good?
Yeah. All right. Any questions on the Education Committee agenda?
I didn't even get attendance.
All right, we will close that and we'll go over to Ms. Husak?
Leave me alone tonight. Good evening, everyone. I'll turn it over to Dr. Stoker to review policy.
Thank you, Mrs. Husak. We have several policies on the agenda this evening, and also as part of our policy discussion, we're going to hold our wellness committee meeting this evening as well. So our first policy that's on here is attendance. Many of the policies, or actually I believe almost all of the policies except for one this evening, have been updated for educational instability. That's something new that came as part of legislation that was passed to make sure that students who are experiencing educational instability are monitored and we can help them get to graduation. So many of the policy changes came for those reasons. The first one, attendance. Matt, do you want to open that one?
I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay.
Man, you give him a new title and he can't handle the job he has.
No.
If you just want to scroll through that. So
Sure.
some of the quick changes here. Right there, this one is just changed for situations where it's not a parent or a guardian. So there's been new language for equity reasons that say person in parental relation. So that is something now that is being seen in the policies for that circumstance. I keep scrolling. There. Again, that's the educational instability I talked about. Most of the policies you'll see have been updated to include not just homelessness, foster care, military connectedness, but also other forms of educational instability.
What does that mean?
So it's, for instance, if a student has been in 5 different districts throughout the school
Okay.
year, and maybe they've accumulated, let's say that they're a high school student, has accumulated part of a credit throughout, but they've never really gotten a quarter grade or something. We can somewhat go back and piece together that history and possibly give them credit for courses that they've attended but not been in one place long enough to get a grade. So we try to help them kind of collect their educational experiences and get them to graduation. Again, for equity reasons, rather than having a doctor's note, it does have the healer that is part of the policy now as well. And that is the only other change that's in there. Any questions on attendance? Do we have the ability from the board members present to move this policy forward to a first reading and Monday night?
Yes.
All right, thank you. The next policy is graduation requirements. Yep, under authority, the first one, it's just changing the way that we're stating that the regulations come as part of the law and regulations. Moving forward, in the next paragraph, it's just saying that we have to post these and it has to be on the district's publicly accessible website. So the information regarding graduation requirements have to be on there now. Next talks about diplomas and any exclusion that we have with regard to a school suspension. Sometimes with seniors, we get to the point where, they may do something right before graduation. This addresses that part. Right below that, you'll again see students experiencing educational instability, and it talks about what we can do to help those students get to graduation. The next part is students with disabilities. The language here, for the most part, remain the same. It's just moving some things around. Part-time students and full-time post-secondary students. When we track students for the credit they give to a district, we have to be careful how we track them. If we're paying for their post-secondary experiences, if they're paying for those on their own. So we have to make sure that for child accounting, we do what's appropriate, and that addresses that piece for part-time and post-secondary students, full-time post-secondary students. And then the last one on the last page, the superintendent or designee annually just has to make sure that we do our graduation information and upload that to the state as required. Any questions on that policy? We have the permission from the board members present to move graduation requirements to Monday night for a first reading.
Looks good.
Thank you. Next one is dress and grooming. The first paragraph that we arrive at there talks about, again, students that are experiencing educational instability, and if they were to have a dress or grooming, as part of the policy, if they were to violate the policy, that we have to give them some flexibility based upon their educational instability. Responsibility that building principals or designees shall be responsible to monitor student dress and grooming. The board has the right to enforce the policy. Superintendent or designee shall ensure that all school rules implementing the policy are imposed to the minimum necessary restrictions on the exercise of the student's taste and individuality. Okay, and then the last piece, that staff members shall be instructed to demonstrate by example positive attitudes in compliance with board policy and school rules related to dress and grooming. So to serve as a respectful dress model, but then also to support the policy as well, and not to talk down about our dress and grooming policy. Any questions on that policy? Do we have permission from the board members present to move that one to a first reading for Monday night?
Looks good.
All right, thank you. The next policy is policy 233, suspension and expulsion. So this one talks about the offenses that could possibly lead to exclusion from school need to be publicized. We do this typically in our student handbook, where we talk about discipline, and then that handbook is then put onto our website for each of our school buildings. Further down, we are changing some of the he and she, the pronouns to their or the student. So you'll see some of those changes throughout the policy. Next talks about suspensions and that they cannot run consecutively beyond the 10-day school period. Again, there's some changes in pronouns there. And then that is being changed from 17 to 18 due to compulsory attendance laws changing. So that's been updated to reflect that. The board has the right to waive the 30-day period at its discretion when we have students that are being expelled. And I believe that's the last one for that policy. Any questions on that one? Do we have permission from the board members present to move that one forward for first reading for Monday night?
Yes.
Thank you. The next policy is 339, uncompensated leave. This is not a policy that was being updated by PSBA. This is a policy that's being updated in-house to make sure that we accomplish a couple things, and I'll just read them off the agenda. That we reflect practice of uncompensated leave in relation to other types of leave. That we require documentation for additional uncompensated leave requests beyond 3 days of sick leave. And then we made some other minor changes in there as well. So now this reflects the practice that's actually happening. So we were not running this along with the family and medical leave, so we took that part out. And we want to make sure that when we have employees that are applying for uncompensated leave days, we try to vet those as much as possible and want to make sure that they're not taking those unless they're absolutely needed, hopefully for medical reasons. Not hopefully for medical reasons, but we hope that that's the reason that they're using those kinds of days. So this would require them to have notes after the 3 sick days, that they would have to have a note typically. Each one after that, they would have to have a medical note if they're looking to use this policy in that way. Any questions on that? Okay, do we have the ability to move 339 to the board meeting for Monday night for first reading? Okay, thank you. Our next policy is 808. This policy, food services, has not changed. We have this on here, the reason we have this on here is that the wellness committee meeting typically happens around this time annually. So I'm gonna hand things over to Mrs. Spink, and she's gonna run our wellness committee meeting this evening.
Yes, so this time last year, we conducted our triennial assessment of our wellness.
Mrs. Fink, do you want to maybe join us at the table?
Sure.
Thank you.
I think it was around June of last year, we did our triennial assessment of our wellness committee, and we identified, things that we're doing good overall, district-wide, things that we need to improve upon or work towards. And just reflecting, from last year to this year, I just wanted to highlight a couple things that are either in the works or that we've already been able to accomplish. And the first one here is the nutrition content of our meals being published to the parents, nursing staff specifically, things like that, just so that, they have full access to that information based off of our menus. So we did just switch over to our new POS system, and we also are having a new back of the house system as well. So we just got trained on how to, enter all the nutrition information for all of our products, which is a very, very extensive list and is going to be a huge project over the summer. But our target is may not be full into effect at the very, very start of next year, but shortly after that, hopefully the parents can download the School Cafe app, get in there, hover over our menus every day, and it'll populate a nutrition facts label and give them exactly the information they need. That also includes allergies. Very helpful for nursing as well, for example, for the carbohydrate count of our meals when administering insulin, so on and so forth. So that'll be, we're in the works of that. That's not fully completed yet, but it'll be here before we know it. Also, just the second bullet point, in the past we have tried to involve students and parents more in our menu planning, particularly when we've had interns in the fall months, and we always have both fall and spring. Again, Margaret's with me for 5 weeks, and that seems to be, 5 to 6 weeks, the length of them being with us to help with initiatives like this. So just doing surveys, polls, taste testings with the students to involve parents and students more in the process of creating our menus for more outreach. And then the third bullet point here that we've been doing well with is during COVID, just to kind of go back a little bit, we had flexibility in what we can serve in terms of the nutritional guidelines. They weren't quite as strict just because of the supply chain issues we had, and just getting product in, period, was an issue. So I'm happy to say that any of our non-compliant breakfast items that we were serving, as well as our snacks, like for a la carte purchases, they are all Smart Snack compliant now. So just switching everything over to whole grain, making sure they're under the sodium, the fat, the sugar guidelines that are required. So everything we serve now, not just like our main meals, but also our snacks and our beverages, are all back to being compliant. And for areas that we still are working through that I wanted to make note of was basically nutrition education in general. That was a little bit of our downfall when we completed that assessment. So working with the PE teachers, the other family and consumer science teachers, and just coming up with a curriculum that we can build upon what they're already doing in touching on nutrition. Again, interns will be a big help with that, but just also when we aren't blessed with the interns being here, that time in the interim of, me being, more communicating with the teachers to continue those different curriculums in the classroom. Also, just a couple extra things I noted of things that we're looking to do moving forward: monthly nutrition newsletters, updating our cafeteria tab on the website to have more resources for parents if they're looking for, healthy meal and snack ideas to do at home, how to shop on a budget and still, maintain nutrition, things like that. We have 2 resources up there currently with links of reputable websites to go to, but there's so many out there that we're looking to update that as well. And again, just working with even not just the family and consumer science, but I believe it's like the life skills teachers as well. I know one of them here at Slatington uses the kitchen sometimes to do different baked good projects that involve the students. So my thought would be, how can we modify this yummy baked good and make it just a little bit more healthier by, doing sugar sub, or making a lower fat version of what they're making, and just, adding that missing nutrition component that is not being done. And I believe, and my last point was just also looking out to local agencies and institutions to provide even more opportunities for students to learn more about nutrition. So community college, YMCA, farmers markets, things like that. Just maybe doing like field trips to a farm or something like that, a little bit different than their normal field trips, I'm assuming, but things like that to just get an interest in the field. And if there's any, students in the district that want to pursue either culinary or nutrition down the road, involving them and coming up with some projects that they also need to, meet certain curriculum requirements for themselves. So those were some ideas that were thrown around, and just kind of an overall update on our progress towards these different things for the Wellness Committee. Any questions? No? That was all I had for that part, so.
Thank you. Ms.
All
Fagan.
right, thanks.
Thank you, Ms. McHugh, for all the help that you're giving to her to do that as well. Okay, transportation.
Our next policy is transportation. This will be a super quick one. This is only being changed with regard to the policy references. So you'll see some of those numbers in green, some have been crossed out. Those are just policy references that have changed. Again, it's all based on that educational instability. And when it comes down to transportation, there are certain laws that we have to follow with regard to that. So it's just essentially citations there. The next policy is policy 830.1. This is electronic data storage. Act 151 of 2022 updated the Breach of Personal Information Notification Act. That law actually takes effect May 1st of 2023. So this is with regard to anyone in the Commonwealth that maintains, stores, or manages computerized data. With regard to our data storage policy, it's any kind of information that we would have that would be personal information for people. So we have to have a policy for how we're going to store that, how we're going to protect that data. And this is a policy that was given to us through the EdTech Pool Council. That's through the IU. So this was just a topic of conversation that came up and something that they knew we needed to have. So they put out a model policy, and that's the policy we're looking to adopt. Mr. Hill, I don't know if there's anything you want to add from the tech side of things?
No, not really. As you said, it's just a new policy, and it's something that the Tech Council recommended that we put in place. So this is a brand new policy.
Okay, and then
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Is the data storage separate from, for instance, accessing like our emails or something of that such, where the district is the district putting anything in place, like the MFA type programs or that type of
Actually,
policy? Or
I
is
would
that
say
in here and I didn't read to it?
A lot of the things that are in this policy are things that we have been putting in place, already have in place, so yeah, to answer your question, yeah, basically, these are things that we have been putting in place over the last so many years. Like some of the things that they talk about with backups and things of those nature, like you said with the multi-factor authentication, things like that. So yeah, these are things that we have been putting in place. But it might be covered under, this policy is just for this specific purpose, so for the data storage part of it. So some of those other things are things that were put in place for, like we have insurance requirements and things like that.
Right.
Like that's why some of the multi-factor was put in place more for like insurance requirements.
So our district is using MFA?
Yes.
Yes.
Since the beginning of the school year, I believe.
Yeah, we enabled it. Yeah, it was sometime over this last year we did. Yeah.
So we don't need it? Accessing emails? And Google
Yeah.
Docs?
You will, yes.
Okay.
We started enabling that like in phases.
Okay.
We started with like a small group just to test it, then we rolled it out to other people, we tested it. But it will be just staff, it's not going to be students at this point.
Thank you.
I can attest that it's working because when I was out of
Yes.
state, I had to do it almost every single time.
Yes.
Same thing, yeah.
It's-
I had to travel and, yeah, I was on anytime you're on a network that it doesn't recognize, all of a sudden your multi-factor starts going off.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I work
can
back and
attest to
forth
that.
between home and work every time I switch.
So again, this is a lot of the things we are doing just codified in policy. It's a policy that we are required to have moving forward. So we've essentially looking to adopt the model policy that came through the Tech Pool Council. Board members, do we have your permission to move that one forward for a first reading for Monday night?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. And that is our last policy for this evening.
Okay, we will jump over, let's see, we are at community relations, I believe now.
Yes.
And I
See,
will,
The name Natalie is in there in the third spot now, so you're officially the chairperson.
I just switched that real time.
Just to point it now.
Yes.
Let's open up the Community Relations Committee meeting. I'm not sure who is going to be giving the update on the career and.
Sure. So I am actually going to hand it off. This will probably be the last large public update sharing that we're having about our Career College and Military Readiness Fair. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Stroll, who for the second year in a row is spearheading this, what I'm going to now qualify as a massive event. So, Mr. Stroll?
Yes, definitely bigger than last year. So the Northern Indiana High School is proud to announce the second annual Career College and Military Readiness Fair. It will be on Friday, April 21st from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. for students in grades 7 through 12. However, we also have Mr. Briner's 4th, 5th, and 6th grade students coming down to tour the hard assets and pretty much get demonstrations on what those vehicles do, the special things that they do. What really drove the vendors, we have 71 vendors as compared to last year we had 54. 71 vendors coming. What drove that search was the publication that the Lehigh Valley Chamber of Commerce, Economic Chamber of Commerce put out in their Hot Jobs publication. And so, you know, the top 4 hot job areas in the Lehigh Valley are healthcare, manufacturing, logistics, and hospitality. So we do have a number of vendors from large companies, local companies, 4-year colleges, 2-year colleges, trade schools, all branches of military, and also we want to make sure that our students understand that they can also join community membership organizations like Lions Club, Rotary, Masons, and so we have those, and the Slatington Library. So we have those vendors coming as well to educate our students on how they can give back to their community once they're older, and some of them do qualify right now currently because we have the Leo Lions Club that come into our school on a monthly basis. So we're really proud of that. Obviously the goal is to educate students on post-secondary opportunities, career pathways, and also to make it impactful. This year, we have a helicopter landing by the state police. They'll be landing a helicopter, and so that's going to make it even more impactful. Officer Jones is already aware of that, and our buildings and grounds are aware of that too. So
What time's that happening?
yeah, so the helicopter landing is at 12, and they'll be here for about an hour. We scoped out the area last year with the pilots came up. So that we scoped out the area last year. It's where the cheerleaders sort of cheer and practice next to the field hockey field where the middle school is, where Snyder Avenue, Bulldog Lane, and the middle school are right there. So all the hard assets then will also be sort of out of that area, but lined up and parked on Snyder Avenue, which is in Google Maps it says Bulldog Lane, but it's actually Snyder Avenue between the middle school and the high school. And all the table vendors will be inside the gym, and so we'll have about 6 groups of students, 7 through 12, rotating in and out from 9 to 1. Kudos to the committee. Kudos to Mrs. Fink. Thank you for helping out with the refreshments. We are commandeering Mr. Shuey's art room again this year. It's the hospitality suite, and I want to give a nice public shout out to Ronnie Kuntz and the Northern Lehigh Team Sales for donating about 145 Bulldog embroidered satchel bags. So thank you very much to the committee and all those who are contributing. And thank you to the board for allowing us to do this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Schroll. And we have another second annual event, which is coming up, which is not on the scale of the Career College and Military Readiness Fair, but it is equally as exciting and just kind of a feel-good event for our students, their families, and our staff. So, Mrs. Dada.
So we are going to have the second annual Bulldog Games, May 24th from 9 to 1 o'clock. Rain date will be the 25th. It was actually backed by request because Lehigh County is having their Special Olympics. However, they are changing it quite a bit. The Bulldog Games will be life skills and the IU classrooms that are housed here at Northern Lehigh. And we will have the Student Council of Edom and any other, I think the field track and field is also going to be helping with buddies. All are welcome. Please stop by. It would be wonderful to see some school board faces there. And then I just wanted to just touch on some of the reasons was Lehigh County has now changed theirs to go 3rd grade to 12th grade. So some of our students would not be able to attend, our younger students. And they're also just going to have everybody rotating around, and there's going to be 4. So we'll have to see what it's like. I'm going to kind of stop by and reevaluate if we do both next year, if we do one next year, and we'll see. But I'm excited. Everybody's excited to have another Bulldog Games here.
Mrs. Dada, I'm sorry, is it 9 to 1 or 10 to 1? I may have put the wrong.
Sorry, 10 to 1.
It is 10, okay, I just want to make sure it's
It is 10 to 1
accurate.
because of transportation.
Yep. Yeah, so we'll be busing over the children from Peters Elementary and the IU classrooms from Peters.
Correct.
So they can all participate.
And that's just our school, correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, does anyone have any further questions on the community relations and committee meeting? If not, we'll close that meeting.
Yours was shorter than mine.
What's that?
I said yours was shorter than mine.
Thank you, everyone.
Sorry.
You did a way better job than Chad.